Hello, everyone. Welcome back at this new series that we have titled The Textual History of the Quran. This is Al-Fadi, and with me here in studio to discuss this kind of standalone really series that is built in upon the work of others in relationship to the early Quranic manuscripts. This particular video is going to be intended to whet your appetite of what's to come later. Within few months, we are going to add more videos basically to unpack whatever we are going to share with you today. Dr. J, thank you for joining me again. Please, basically take it from here.
Okay. In the first episode, we looked and we defined what textual criticism is. Textual history of the Bible, which is really where it was invented. This whole idea of textual history was invented on this book here. And that's why almost everything that we're going to be speaking about was first done to this book here. And now we're asking the same thing of this book here. A textual history of any book is going back and seeing what the original, trying to get back to the original text, trying to get back to what the author had written. Any book, that would be the case. We can't do that with this book because we don't have the originals. So that's why we have to go to the earliest. And that's why we have an enormous amount of papyri that we have come across. We have fragments. We have the Bodmer Papyrus. You have the John Rylands manuscript, which are just fragments. John Rylands in Manchester, the Bodmer Papyrus in Switzerland. You have the Chester Beatty manuscripts, which are in Dublin in Ireland. These are the earliest fragments we have, but the earliest complete manuscripts are what we call the three metropolitan codices with the Sinaiticus, the Vaticanus, and the Alexandrinus that we showed in the last episode. Those are the most exciting because they're the both first complete manuscripts that start to appear in the 4th century. Now, for as long as I've been working with Islam, for 40 years now that I'm working in Islam, Muslims have always said that we cannot go back to the original of the Bible, and we agree with that. We can't go to the original, but they can go to the original of the Quran. Now, you ask any Muslim anywhere at any day, at any time, do they have the origin of this book? And they all say yes. Except the academics, they all say yes. You've heard this, I've heard it, anybody who is listening has heard it, they always say so. But I wanted to, we were back at Speaker's Corner, Hatun and I came down back from Poland. I was coming back through London, and May 26th, we were going to introduce this book. Because this book by Dan Brubaker was just published 2 hours before we got up on the ladder at Speaker's Corner. So I got up on the ladder at Speaker's Corner, and there was Ali Dawa, there was Mohammad Hijab, there was Mansoor Othman, there was Adnan Rashid. All the big players on the internet were there. I guess they'd heard. I understand that they heard I was coming. They were going to take me on. They were sitting at the back of the crowds. I could see them off to my left. I knew they were going to confront me, and then we had held up this book. None of them came forward because they didn't know what to do with this, except Mansoor Othman. They kind of pushed forward. And Mansoor Othman, if to know who he is, he's a Bangladeshi. I've known him the 25 years I've been at Speaker's Corner. He's been there, and he is very well versed, probably better versed than anyone I have come across on the earliest Quranic manuscripts. And one of the reasons is because I understand, I've been told this, I cannot prove this, but I've been told this, that he works on the Islamic Awareness website. This Islamic Awareness website came out in the late 1990s. It was housed in Cambridge University. I understand that it was put up there to house all of the earliest manuscripts of the Quran, to have them filmed and to all come out with what they considered was an academic overview of every one of the manuscripts. I understand that Mansoor Othman also works in that site, so he is by far the best qualified at Speaker's Corner, and I would say probably one of the best qualified that I've come across to be able to answer what Dan Brubaker was coming up with. And certainly right on cue, he put his ladder next to mine, which he used to do for many years whenever I was at Speaker's Corner. Many times he'd put his ladder uninvited, and he'd just get up there and try to take us on. And we engaged, even though we were on another subject, and he was pretty clear that he could not deal with these because he had not come across them, and he said so. He wasn't aware of these variants. He said he had done work on them. Nonetheless, he then got up on the ladder, and I just want to put up this slide here. There's a picture of Mansoor there on the ladder. He has the black cap. That's Mansoor Othman. That's me in the middle, and that's Hatun on the left. Hatun and I were trying to introduce this material when he kept on interrupting. I finally turned to him and I asked him about these variants, and he tried to say these are nothing more than scribal errors. But then he made a comment, and I've got the video, and I could put the video on, but we're going to do it for later. The video, it takes about 5 minutes, because then he goes and he turns to me and says, Jay, We don't have to worry about these manuscript variants. We don't really care about these. Of course, he didn't want to say these really did bother him, because we have a textual history of the Quran that goes right back to Uthman. Right back to Uthman. Oh, I couldn't believe that he said that.
He will be the first to ever admit something like this.
There were 20 cameras on him. Now, every Muslim would say this, and I remember Shabir Ali used to say this, Adnan Rashid used to say this when I had debates with him much earlier. But here was Mansoor Othman, the man who was the only one that really had access, really did have immediate access to these manuscripts. He should know this. And so I said, ooh, that turned to him. And if you look in the video, it's on Fander Films. You can go and see it's from May 26th. Go and look on Fander Films. I've got it up there. Look about the 30th minute and look for about the 25th minute, and then look for the next 30 minutes. Look what happens. I immediately turn to him and I say, okay, so you can claim that you have a complete textual history, not oral. I don't care about the oral, because that you can't test. Because anybody can say we have an oral history, but who can test that? No one's there. We're now here. But you're saying that you have a textual history. That means you have unfettered history of this book all the way back to Uthman. He first said Muhammad, but then he quickly changed it to Uthman. Okay, to Uthman, that's 652. That means that you can show a complete Quran. And I turned to him, you can show me a complete Quran, 114 surahs, that goes right back to Uthman 652. He was quiet. People in the crowd started saying, well, answer him, can you? He didn't answer. You can see, I was hanging him. So I said, okay, let me help you here. Let's say the 7th century. 7th century. 699, okay? At least up to 699. That's when the century that Muhammad still lived. That's the century that Uthman still lived. I'm putting it back 40 years. You have a complete textual history that you can show me of the complete Quran, 114 surahs, that goes back to 699. He still wouldn't answer. People started interrupting. He started taking them on nothing about this. And finally, he then turned to me and he says, we have a complete history for up to the 1st century of Islam. And I quickly said, well, hold on a minute. The 1st century of Islam, that's from 622. And I said 721. I gave him 2 extra years. It's actually 719, but I want to give him 2 extra years. So I said, okay, 721, you're saying. From 622 to 721, you can show me a complete Quran. 114 surahs.
Right. Just
like what we have in our hand today. Exactly like this. No, I'm not asking for direct critical marks. I'm not asking for vowelization, because those hadn't been invented yet.
At least the rasm would match.
A rasm, complete rasm text. Word for word, exactly like you have in this Quran here. All the way back to the 1st century AH. I'm even giving you extra 2 years, 621. He said, you're not listening to me, Jay. I said, well, I am. I mean, we're all listening to you. We're all filming you. 20 different cameras, all right there, including your own camera was right there. He said, we have 97%. We have 97% by the time of the 1st century. 97%. So not 100%. So you're admitting you don't have 100%. 721, Muhammad died in 632. The Quran was finalized and written down in its final form in 632 he died. 652, Uthman then finalizes the Quran. So from 652 up till 721, say 722, you're talking about 70 years. In 70 years, you still don't have a complete Quran. You're finally admitting you don't have a complete Quran. Now, I wish I had known what he meant by this 97%. I was just incredulous that he was not even admitting 100%. But I wanted to find out where he got this 97. That was curious to me. So I went back onto the Islamic Awareness website when I got back to stay. I want to put up that video there. I'm sorry, that slide there. Can you see that? It was actually 96% that they have on their website. This is cumulative surahs tabulated up to 719, which means the first century AH. Can you see that red line going up in an arc there? Note that by 719, only 96% of the Quran can be found, right? Mm-hmm. That's nearly 100 years after Muhammad died. Give or take 10 years. No, it's a little over 10 years. Let's say it's about 12, 13 years before he died. So there is no complete Quran for almost 100 years after Muhammad. That's a huge admission. But I'm still curious about this 96%. So I went further on down into Islamic Awareness. I came across this. This is straight out of their pages, okay?
Right. I did see that myself, yeah.
You've seen this?
Yeah.
And anybody who go up right now. Go up and look at it. This is what they're talking about. They're looking at this. Look on the left side. Look at all those black descriptions. Those are all names. Those are names of different manuscripts.
Like, for instance, you have the one, the Ma'il at the top.
The 2165. That's the Ma'il. That's the one in the British Library, and it is not even 50%. It's less. It's just a little over 50% of the Quran. But take a look at the ones. As you come down, they get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, all the way down to just a few ayahs, a few verses here, a few verses. But in order to get 96% of the Quran, they have got to look at 63 different, mostly fragments, and one large document called the Ma'il, which is the 26.
Like copy and paste them, right, together?
They've gone here and got a fragment here. They got here and got a few verses here. They went over here and got a few verses. They got here, and they come up with 63. It's not one Quran. It's 63 different Qurans, and most of them are just little verses. In order to get 96% of the Quran.
And the dating is not all at the same time. I mean, I would take probably 63, fragments if it's all done within the same decade, maybe. But we're talking different.
This is all you've seen, right?
Right.
And you heard the claim now. All of these they're saying are before 719. Every one of these is before 1719. How did they know that?
That's interesting.
You'd like to know, wouldn't you?
Of course.
Well, my team in London have been given this. I commissioned them to do that. And they have been going through every one of those 63. We wanted to see if they were correct. You want to see what we found? Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Take a look at this. These are how many are tentatively dated with disagreement between scholars. These are 20 of them that you see those arrows going up right now. Those we don't really know. There's a lot of disagreement between the scholars as to whether or not any of them.
I mean, I see the one I'm working on already, the Sana'a manuscript, which is the DAM01-27.1. I can tell you that I'm not so sure how he can be confident about dating, and also what about the variances that are found there.
Okay, so 20 are tentatively dated with disagreements between scholars. Take a look at the next one. These 9 that I'm putting up in blue right here, they are all dated after 719. Why are they even up there? And look at which is one right at the top, the biggest one, the 2165.
That's the Ma'il, which, by the way, usually when you say Ma'il, which is Hijazi style, I mean, it is the earliest known style of writing, and definitely people assume immediately that it was written as close as possible to the time of Prophet. But even this one, there's a dispute about the date anyway.
Oh, this one is well known that this is not. And these 9 are not before 719. So these are clear. What about the last 34? The other 34? Take a look at every one that you see of these red arrows going up. Every one of these we have no way of knowing. Thus, it is pure speculation by Muslims. They have grabbed these without any proof of any of their dates. Half of the ones they have up there is no way of knowing.
Now, you did mention that the Islamic Awareness is basically associated with, did you say Cambridge?
It's put on the Cambridge. This is what I've been told. I have to be careful because I don't quote me on that. I've told it's been put on the Cambridge University server, so that's why they.
The reason why I'm asking is Cambridge cares for their reputation. They're not going to really come up with any.
This is not supported by Cambridge University.
Okay.
That makes sure that.
Okay, very good.
It just comes from Cambridge. It's put up on the server there, and it comes from that city. No, Cambridge University would never ever allow someone to say these kind of things, because take a look at them. In fact, of the 63 manuscripts, I would say not any of them are surely from before 719. It's just complete speculation. This is, to me, desperation. This is sheer desperation.
And obviously, I can see the point behind what he's trying to do, to show you that if we look at all these fragments, we can have 96 or 97% of the Quran. But the issue that we were raising, has nothing to do with whether you can put these pieces together. It has to do with earliest dates possible to have a complete Quran.
Put up the next slide. I want you to put up this next slide.
Quran.
What we're now seeing now, when Mansoor made this claim, he was quoting from his own website. He was quoting from the material that he has to, because that's the only thing he can quote from. We now realize that there are no complete Qurans for the first 100 years of Muhammad, because we know that we can't find even a complete Quran for the 9th or 10th century either. The Muslims have had to collect 63 fragments of the Quran to find even 96%. They say by 719, yet almost all of those that they have listed up there that you can see see are either tentative or have no supporting evidence for any real early dates. Some of their dates even go into the 9th and 10th century. They have not studied any of them to know if they agree with the current 1924 Hafs text. See, that's another thing that needs to go on. That's the next step. We need to look and see whether or not these even are the same as the text that I have in my hand here. And then so do any of them have variant readings. Now, can you see there's an awful lot of work to do. But
Absolutely.
when Mansoor made that comment with 20 cameras on him, nobody really knew that he was basically just talking in thin air. We would never make claims about the Bible like that.
And that's the kind of environment I grew up in. A lot of talk in thin air, no proof.
Now, what our team is doing is we're now going to look at every one of these 63. In fact, I've got the paper already of all of them. It has just been handed me. We now have, it's a huge one. I don't want to bring it here into the studio. I'm giving you a copy of it. Others are going to have a copy of it. We are now going to go and see exactly what these 63 contain. We're going to see if they even are 96%. I would guess they are 96%. But we really want to know what the dates are. And we also want to know whether or not they even equate with this book. But the big question, the huge question, the real question we're really asking is, so when was the Quran finished? When is that complete Quran that I asked him there on the ladder in May 26? When is that complete Quran, that's 114 surahs, that the razm, I'm not saying about the diacritical marks, I'm not saying about where the razm, the skeletal text, this here, the razm, the skeletal text, equates with this Quran that I have in my hand today that was only canonized in 1985 for the whole world. Mm-hmm. Right now, December 2019, what date would you like to give? Just, let's see, this is going to, what if? What would you guess would be the first complete Quran that we're going to find that matches this Quran that I have in my hand today?
I'm not really so sure that we will ever find such a thing, but I'm going to take a guess and say between the 11th and 12th century.
I'm going to say 10th century. So let's see who's correct. Am I going to be correct, or are you going to be correct? Now, even the 10th century, and you're saying 11th century, the 10th century, we're talking about 300 years after that time of Uthman. You're saying 400 years. What do the Muslims have always claimed? We don't have any book at all, any complete manuscript until the 4th century.
There you go.
There you go. So even us, and that we're being conservative. We're being quite conservative. We're probably both going to be proven wrong, and they're probably we have. That's why the Corpus Quranicum. That's why the Quranic. What's this one that's been done here? Gateway, Quran Gateway.
Oh, the Quran Gateway.
The Quran Gateway, Quran. They're doing this very thing. They're trying to look and see when is that Holy Grail, the Holy Grail of the Quran. When are they going to find the entire Quran, just like the Quran we have here, just like that which was chosen in 1924 by Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad, or that was chosen by Hafs way back in 796, attributed to Hafs in 790. We don't have his manuscripts, so we don't even know what he chose, because we know that there are 7 different derivations of even his manuscript that are in existence today. Hatun has 7 of them. So can you see, this is the big question. When Muslims have claimed over and over again that they have that this is the only book that can be traced back to its origin. This is the only book where a textual history can go right back to Uthman. And that's what he said on May 26th. We're in December now. This was just 4 or 5 months earlier. He's still saying that in the 21st century. We're going to shut down Mansoor. We're going to shut down anybody that makes that claim again. With the graph, let's put it up one more time. When you look at those, when you look at all those arrows, look at how many of them, in fact, not one of them is assured. Not one of those fragments, not one of those manuscripts, none of them are complete to begin with, but not one of them is assured of that date. And we can pretty much say that I would guess that almost all of them are after 719. There may be 1 or 2 that may be before, but I'm guessing almost all of them are probably after. Can you see what this is going to do to the Quran? This is going to push back the date for the Quran more and more and more and more. And then the next thing we need to do, and that's what we're going to be doing after that, is looking and seeing when the Shahada actually existed. When do we find the first Shahada? I'd like to know when this verse, chapter 4, verse 157, about the crucifixion, Christ not dying on the cross, when was that introduced? Can you see there's an awful lot we'd like to start asking about when these different places are introduced. I'd like to know when the reference to Mecca was introduced. in chapter 48, verse 28.
Right.
I mean, there's so many things that we'd like to. Once we can do a chronological history of the Quran, when the verses were introduced, then we can start asking these kind of questions, because then you will then see that this is a book not from God. This is a book that does not come from Muhammad. This is a book that does not come from Uthman. This is a book that doesn't even come from Abdul Malik. It looks like it's been added and added and added and added and added over the centuries and finally canonized in the 20th century.
Amen. And with that, of course, thank you so much. And hopefully this teaser is going now to whet your appetite. As you can see, we always labor to work hard to present to you groundbreaking information and data based on real, tangible experience. In this case, it was at the Speaker's Corner. We heard something. Our dear brother heard something. He went immediately, him and his team, to research it, and we want to present to you the findings. We do not want to really hoard this information to ourselves. It doesn't do us any good. But we do not also want to just share things without backing it up with real data. And that's what we are hoping to present to you pretty soon. So stay tuned until then. God bless. Thank you for watching. Please like our video, and we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sira International. And be sure also to click the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we upload new videos into the channel. And finally, I like to prayerfully encourage you to become a patron through Patreon. Your giving is much needed and will enable us to produce more and more of videos like this so that we can publish them on a weekly basis. So thank you in advance.